I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. Welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show on KBLA Talk 1580. Welcome forward. In the first hour on Wealthy Wednesdays on the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show, the great debate rages on in states across the country. But what about who we want to be? What about faith? What about the civil code? Pastor Raymond C. Dix Jr. has served faithfully in the preaching ministry of Jesus Christ for past 44 years and is now serving in Fort Wayne, Indiana, as a senior pastor of the Pilgrim Baptist Church. Pastor Dix comes from Pilgrim with over 30 years of pastoral experience, with much of it being urban inner city ministry experience. Pastor Dix strongly believes that the hope of any community is in the Gospels. He is a deep believer in expository preaching and teaching in the church community. Pastor Dix currently serves and holds many certifications and recognitions for his service and years of service in the community, as well as a bachelor's degree in biblical studies from Indiana Wesleyan University, and he is currently pursuing an MDiv degree with the intention of completing his doctoral studies as well. Pastor Dix is also a member of the A Phi A Fraternity Incorporated, but we will not fault him for that. On the Omega side of the Divine Nine. Also joining us in the first hour, probably at the first or the second break, will be Representative Cam Buckner, who is a native of the South Side of Chicago, the fourth child of Chicago public school teacher and a law enforcement officer. He is the assistant minority leader of the Illinois House of Representatives. He was with us briefly yesterday, but he's back today. Pastor Dix, welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show.
Hey, good afternoon. Thank you so much for having me on. It's good to see you and hear from you again. And I'm so happy that you will not hold that A Phi A designation against me, but as I will not hold yours against you. So that's how the truly Divine Nine Brotherhood works.
That's how it works. Pastor, I appreciate you. Being here. In the past week or so, I'd like to pivot from talking about solely the circumstances of what has taken place in the national body politic. As you know, the government is looking at its budget. There is concern that the government itself could very well shut down. Democrats see it as a way of protest. But it's also occurring in the context of last week's national tragedy. I see us no longer at just a political crossroads, Pastor Dix. I see us in some kind of a spiritual crossroads as a nation. Pastor Dix, help us interpret the context and the circumstances that we as a nation find ourselves in.
Yeah, and I would have to agree with you. This has gone beyond a political dynamic. It is now, crossroads was a good word that you use. It is also, and has been, I think, for some time, a spiritual crossroads. The question has always been before believers, probably since the inception of America, where's the dynamic tension that exists between who Jesus calls believers to be and who we become as a nation when you add in the political dynamics to our communities, our states, and our national circumstances, government. So I think very clearly we are at this crossroads, and we've been there for a long time. And the question is, do we have the courage to, as believers, to be who Christ called us to be, even if it means for some discomfort within the body politic? I think that's where we are. We haven't found, as of recent, leaders who seem to have that courage, though they profess their faith in Jesus Christ.
Pastor Dix, I find we were all raised to believe the rhetoric that there is a separation between church and state, and maybe institutionally, that's absolutely correct. But the tensions between Democrat and Republican, between liberal and conservative, between the so-called radical right and the so-called radical left, It suggests a division in national spirit energy, that we are talking past each other. We are not talking to each other, that the church in a real sense, and I mean by that, the church within us is really in a spiritual division. I've seen people arguing in grocery stores, so much for separation between our spirituality and our politics. I see college campuses that are divided. I've seen counties in the state of Illinois talking about seceding from Illinois and joining Indiana. I have seen blue city mayors under attack, and we have these colors and this framework that it makes it very difficult in the body politic to actually bring people together. I know that we're going to touch upon these issues when we come forward on the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. I also expect Representative Cam Buckner to join us momentarily when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
While you're stuck in traffic, we can at least bring you up to speed on the news of the day. You're listening to Jesse Jackson Jr. only on KBLA Talk 1580.
With a KBLA Talk 1580 editorial, I'm Dr. Nicolai Corte. Let's preserve Black land stories before they're lost forever. I want to personally invite you to be a part of something historic. As journalist in residence for the Black Land Lost Narrative Archive Project, I've joined forces with powerhouse attorney and social justice champion George Fothery, the man who helped make history by delivering justice to the Bruce family in Manhattan Beach, securing the first known return of land unjustly taken from Black owners by a local government. That victory was monumental, but it was just the beginning. For generations, Black families have acquired land through grit, faith, and determination, only to lose it through violence, legal loopholes, forced sales, and systematic racism. What's been taken goes far beyond dirt and deeds. It's the erasure of wealth, identity, and legacy. That's why we've launched the Black Land Lost Narrative Archive Project, a national effort to collect, protect, and preserve the stories of Black land lost before they're buried, forgotten, or erased altogether. Because there's power in telling Black stories, there is resistance in remembering, and there's justice in being seen and heard. This is where you come in. We're inviting you to be a part of this historic Black narrative archive. If you or someone you know has experienced land loss, displacement, or forced property sales, your story deserves to be heard and remembered. Your story belongs in this archive. Your truth matters not just to your family, but to our collective future. Visit blacklandlost.org today. Fill out our simple intake form and add your voice to the National Archive of Remembrance, Resilience, and Reckoning. Let's make these stories live on, not in whispers, but on the record. With a KBLA Talk 1580 editorial, I'm Dr. Nicolai Corte, and as always, we welcome your feedback.
It's a classic odor tale. You fried fish for dinner, cleaned up, but the smell. Is Pam cheating at charades?
Breathe happy, Febreze, la 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 la.
Now back to more of Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580.
And Illinois are talking about some divisions, but I'm not going to leave it there. In Politico on August 26th, I've been holding this article for a minute. California Republican leader calls for a two-state solution amid redistricting battle. Assembly member James Gallagher said his new proposed state would be among the most populous in the nation. The top Republican in the California Assembly will propose splitting the state into two amid the state's feud over redistricting, calling his proposal, check this out, a two-state solution. Assemblymember James Gallagher plans on Wednesday to brief reporters on legislation that would create a new state in response to Democrats' efforts, which is in response to Governor Abbott's efforts and Donald Trump's efforts to create a new state by dividing California into 2 states. And we have similar activity here in the state of Illinois, similar activity in Indiana, and the very states where these redistricting battles are taking place, there has been the division that is so profound that we are right there on the verge of a conversation about secession. Pastor Dix, welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show.
Thank you.
And just before the break, I did introduce the Assistant Majority Leader of the Illinois House of Representatives, the Honorable Cam Buckner. Cam, welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show.
Thank you for having me.
Representative, this is Pastor Dix, and Pastor Dix, this is Representative Buckner. Both of you in your respective spheres of influence. Representative Buckner in Illinois, who works very hard to keep our state together and speak to all facets of the body politic in the state of Illinois. And Pastor Dix, who was the previous head of the African American Ministers Alliance in the state of Indiana, is well aware of the divisions that exist in the state of Indiana, including but not limited to conversations about redrawing the district of Congressman Andre Carson, which would remove him from the Congress of the United States in this divided and heated discourse. Let me start with Pastor Dix. This idea of not working together and forming new states harkens to the days of the Civil War.
It does definitely hearken to that, and I think it really goes back to the fact that we are wanting to get away from the principles upon which this country was supposedly founded, and that is the discourse of ideas. We no longer want the discourse of ideas. We've drawn the battle lines, and we refuse to come across them as what is best for the nation. We need to be able to get back to that time where we used to communicate with one another, as you said earlier, not at one another. The question now is that if you don't agree with me, I'm just going to take my toys and I'm going to go home, and I'm going to not have any conversations with you. And we're going to consider ourselves as political enemies rather than political opponents. And I think that's a huge distinction in the vernacular and the language that we use. When you speak of someone as an enemy, ultimately you're going to consciously or subconsciously treat that person in that way. If you look at them as an adversary or as an opponent, I should say, then it becomes a question where we can keep dialogue open, and we're not doing that in this country.
Representative Buckner, the idea of bipartisanship in state legislative bodies across the country appears to be echoing the absence of bipartisanship at the national level as well. Your thoughts, Cam Buckner, Representative Buckner, on how to keep a state together?
Yeah, well, that's true, and I think Pastor Dix just said some very powerful things that we see are playing out in full display. But to your point, Congressman, what we're seeing in the electorate is that there is a lack of tolerance when it comes to bipartisanship. We're seeing it on social media, and we're hearing it at the barbershop and at the water cooler. That has then trickled up to our county, our city, and our state governments, which is also on display on the federal level as well, right? And so a lot of what I've been concerned with is making sure that we keep the main thing, which should be making sure that we're resourcing our communities and bringing opportunities to the people that we represent. If you talk to folks around this country, whether they're in Illinois or Indiana or Missouri or Iowa, they're not concerned with having a new state. What they really want is new opportunities, right? If we can keep that as the main focus and to remind people that our job in these elected roles is to be able to give them those opportunities and not let things like these maps be distractions, then we're doing the right thing. But I just hope that we don't get caught up in this conversation the wrong way.
I do want to raise this question, if I can press you, Cam, for just a moment. I've argued that there's no such thing as a local congressman. I need 218 votes to get anything done in Washington, D.C., and I know that you need a majority of votes to get anything done in Springfield. And yet, I do have these obligations in my past life to my constituents. But as the assistant majority leader in the House of Representatives, not only do you have an obligation for your constituents, but there really is a challenge also for you as an elected official and as a party official to see the entire state. And that means that we just don't represent the blue. I mean, we do our stuff in our districts that we've been asked to do, but we're also asked to have a vision that sees downstate Illinois, that sees other communities that are similarly situated with similar problems. And we have an obligation, in my opinion, to do some kind of outreach to them to show them that we are a party that represents everybody.
That's absolutely correct. And I think we get caught up in the nostalgia of the maxim that all politics are local from the former Speaker of the House, Tip O'Neill. And that is true to a certain extent, but the points that you raise are also very, very, very true. As I remind people, I represent the 26th district, right? So I represent South Shore and Bronzeville and Hyde Park and Kenwood. But I legislate for the entire state of Illinois, all 12.5 million people who live in this state. And frankly, because this state is a piece of the larger tapestry of this country, I also see our role as one that's not just citywide, statewide, regional in the Midwest, but I think the things that we do here have long-standing consequences in other places around this country. And so this is not, to your point, something that is only local, something that's only based in the small confines of our districts. The democracy in the way that we have built it in this republic really relies on the ability to talk across spaces geographically in order to move policy. And so I just remind folks that while we may have our delineated spaces from an electoral standpoint, there is always far-reaching consequences for the work that we're doing, and we should take that very seriously.
You know, Pastor Dixon, when I was first elected to Congress, and after a number of years of fighting to get off of the Banking Committee and get on the Appropriations Committee, suddenly I found myself not only having to convince my Democratic colleagues in the Illinois congressional delegation. At that time, I think there were 19 of us, maybe 16 or 19 of us. I can't remember. But after I convinced them, then I had to convince about 3 other states in the Democratic Party, the Democratic representatives in Indiana, the Democratic representatives in Iowa, and the Democratic representatives in other border states to Illinois, to allow me to represent the region on the Appropriations Committee, because I not only saw the 2nd Congressional District of Illinois accomplishments that I was able to bring home that I feel particularly proud about, but I had to go over to Indiana and find out what they needed. And I had to hear what the members of Congress in Iowa needed. And then when I offered appropriations legislation or fought for appropriations legislation, I'm in the 2nd District of Illinois, but I had regional obligations. I had to work with the Republicans in these states, in the Congress of the United States, to deliver projects for them because they weren't on the Appropriations Committee. They might have been on Ways and Means or on Agriculture or on some other committee, but they needed my assistance in their projects. I don't even take credit for those projects because obviously they've taken credit for those projects. But what I'm hearing, Representative Buckner and Reverend Dix, is that process, that system has now broken down. And so there is no shared responsibility regardless of party affiliation. Pastor Dix, that I think also speaks to the spiritual energy that is in each of our legislative bodies.
Yeah, and I think when you say spiritual energy, I would say the lack thereof. Again, I think it's important to remember that this idea of division that is happening across our country does speak to something that Jesus talked about very clearly, and that is the story of the Good Samaritan. Because the question that was before Jesus was, who is my neighbor? You know, love your neighbor as yourself. Who is my neighbor? How have we defined our neighbors in this country. We've defined them now by people who look like us and who think like us. Well, that is not how Jesus defined our neighbors. The key in that story was, here was a man who was a Samaritan, who was pretty much looked down upon as a half-breed by the Jews, who actually showed kindness to someone who was completely unlike him, and not only a temporary or short-term kindness, but a long-term kindness. Whatever he owes, when I get back, I will repay. Now, that is taking the idea of who was my neighbor to a whole nother level. If I can't see Representative Jackson and Representative Buckner, you or any other person as my neighbor, it's going to be very hard to have conversations that's going to better the entire region, community, district, whatever the case may be. And I think that's where we are. We've lost the idea of we're all living in the same country. As President Kennedy once said, we breathe the same air and all of those things. This is why I think someone smarter than me once said that politics is war by a different name and a different means.
Representative Buckner, let me ask you this on the legislative level. There are projects throughout the state of Illinois where you can obviously work with Republicans on, and when you work with Republicans on the projects in their districts, has it been your experience yet that when they have the press conference announcing the project, even though you might have been key to the project, that you were not included in the credit for the project? Talk to me now, because I'm gonna tell you something here in a minute.
I absolutely have seen that, and it's a curious predicament that we find ourselves in when that happens. And even more often, what I see is Republicans fighting me and my colleagues tooth and nail about the state budget. And as one of the architects of the state budget, I deal with this on a very intimate basis. And they will vote against the budget. They will rail against it on the floor. But the moment that we're putting a new senior center in, for instance, Jacksonville, Illinois, or Decatur, Illinois, which, as you know, Congressman Jackson, does not have Democratic representation there, they are the first ones to tout what they brought home, quote unquote, for their people. And so it is a curious situation to be in. I know you've seen this firsthand from your time in the U.S. Capitol. But I think Reverend Dix said something that really, really resonates with me about the story of the Good Samaritan. And I will remind my colleagues and folks who do this work that part of that story is that after he was beaten and left for dead, a priest passed him by and kept moving. And a Levite passed by and kept it moving. And in politics today, we're too often like the priest and the Levite. We walk by the suffering because the people who are hurting are, quote unquote, not our kind, right? But the way I push back on folks who may want credit for things they didn't do or may keep us out of those conversations is that I know, for me, especially for Black, brown, and poor people in the state of Illinois, many of them who live places like Danville, Illinois, and Decatur, Illinois, who don't have representation that is aligned with them. I'm their representative too, and I have to remind myself not to be like that Levite or that priest who passed by the suffering because they were not one of mine.
I think that's absolutely right, and no one's trying to build a monument to themselves. But I even think the symbolism, for example, in a state like Illinois, where if Cam Buckner were invited to the events and that the people in these areas could see who's actually participating, it wouldn't be that, the majority leaders up in Chicago, the speakers up in Chicago, the governors up in Chicago, the president of the Senate is up in Chicago. And then you have all these people in downstate Illinois saying Chicago doesn't care about us. And then when I look at this division in the state of California, where our show is broadcasting live, I have to say to myself, they've gone one step further. This representative says not only do we want a new state, he's saying we want a new governor of our state. We want 2 United States senators in the U.S. Senate. We want our own congressional delegation in Congress. whatever the state is, New California or whatever it is they're going to try to create, it gives you an idea that there is a race to disunion in the United States, and it is greatly and profoundly disconcerting for me. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. You're listening to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show on KBLA Talk 1580. Our guests in this hour are Reverend Dix and the Honorable Cam Buckner.
The biggest names, the best conversations. You're riding with Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Amber Payton with BIN News Now. Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker and Black Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson are blasting President Trump over his threat to send the National Guard to Chicago.
It has never come up. It never came up during the campaign. It's never come up in the first 2 years.
Johnson says no one asked for troops, while Pritzker accused Trump of, quote, losing it, end quote, and possibly suffering from dementia. Former President Barack Obama calls the assassination of conservative activist Charlie Kirk a tragedy, saying political differences do not justify violence. Speaking in Pennsylvania, Obama said while he disagreed with Kirk's ideas, he was a young man with loved ones who are grieving and stressed democracy requires disagreement without violence. And rapper Cardi B revealed on CBS Mornings that she's expecting a baby with New England Patriots star Stephon Diggs. The news comes ahead of her new album, Am I the Drama, that releases Friday, and her Little Miss Drama tour in February. Get BIN News Now on demand 24/7 on the iHeartRadio app.
San Diego's events calendar is full of flavor. Dig into local wine and food festivals, treat the family to kid-inspired deals all October, and get a taste of glory at the Breeders' Cup World Championship. Plan your trip now at sandiego.org/awesome all year. Funded in part with City of San Diego Tourism Marketing District Assessment Funds.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
The Chargers got some good news Wednesday morning concerning All-Pro linebacker Khalil Mack. The 34-year-old Mack will not miss the rest of the season after suffering an elbow injury in the first quarter of Sunday night's win at Las Vegas. The Chargers have yet to say how long Mack will be sidelined. The Chargers play their home opener Sunday against Denver at SoFi. UCLA interim football coach Tim Skipper met with the media for the first time Wednesday morning. The 47-year-old African-American, a native of New Orleans, was promoted on Sunday to replace Deshaun Foster. An 0-3 start prompted UCLA officials to fire Foster on Sunday. Skipper was an assistant at Fresno State before joining Foster's staff this season. UCLA has a bye this weekend. First game for Skipper as head coach is September 27th at Northwestern. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
This is KBLA Talk 1580. Talk radio that's music to your ears. We're unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580.
Hi, I'm Jesse Jackson Jr., inviting you to join me weekdays at 12 noon, right after Tavis Smiley, here on KBLA Talk 1580. As a law school graduate and a theologian with a firm grasp of our body politic given almost 2 decades in Congress, my show is the fresh new home of an authentic, uncompromised quest for transformation and salvation, both personal and collectively, as I vigorously interrogate the theological and symbolic meanings embedded in our society. I promise to leverage my knowledge of history, theology, and both international and domestic issues to imagine an inclusive vision for the future, which I hope will inspire all of us to pursue life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness as a given, not just an aspiration. So join me weekdays at 12 noon, right after Tavis Smiley, for 2 hours of the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show, only on KBLA Talk 1580.
If you're an African-American mom who is pregnant or have a baby under 6 months old, you deserve care that lifts, listens, and lasts. Black Infant Health is for you. It's a free program with individual support, group sessions, and resources to start your mothering journey. BIH makes space for moms and their families to create community. Learn more about the programs in Los Angeles County. Check us out at blackinfanthealth.org.
Imagine a world without heart disease and stroke, where every person has the chance to live a full and healthy life. Join us for a walk to save lives at the American Heart Association's Greater Los Angeles Heart and Stroke Walk, Saturday, September 20th at the Rose Bowl. Every step made and every dollar raised means more people learning CPR, more life-saving research, and more time with the ones we love. Sign up at heartwalkla.org. The LA Heart and Stroke Walk is sponsored by Optum, UCLA Health, Keck Medicine of USC, and Dignity Health.
Wesley Financial Group is not a law firm.
Hi, I'm Chuck McDowell, the timeshare cancellation guy. In 2011, I founded Wesley Financial Group with one goal in mind: to help honest folks out of their timeshares permanently. Today, I run Wesley with my two sons, a real family business, treating every client and every employee like we'd want our own family treated. That philosophy has helped us grow into the largest, most trusted timeshare cancellation company in the United States. Fortune magazine even recognized us as one of the best places to work. Why? Because we genuinely care. In fact, some of our former clients were so moved by their experience working with us, they joined our team so they could help others to timeshare freedom. If you're stuck in a timeshare, give us a call. Let our family help your family.
Call Wesley now for your free timeshare exit kit. 800-687-7979. That's 800-687-7979. 800-687-7979.
You're listening to Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. Welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. Our very special guest in this hour has been Pastor Raymond C. Dix Jr. Pastor Dix comes from Pilgrim Church and has never shied away from tough issues, believing fervently that God's word answers all things. And also Representative Cam Buckner. He previously served as executive director for World Sport Chicago, a nonprofit legacy of Chicago's bid for the 2016 Olympic Games, an organization that uses sport as a tool to provide positive life skill training and opportunities to youth in Chicago's most under-resourced communities. Representative Buckner and Reverend Dix, welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show.
Thank you.
Representative Reverend Dix, let me ask you this question. I am deeply holding on to the belief that Martin Luther King Jr.'s statement in the I Have a Dream speech that little white boys and little black boys and little white girls and little black girls will be able to hold hands. Now, my opinion of that takes on, just as you brought forward the story of the Samaritan, it takes on something else in a legislative body. That I got to hold this hand of this Republican. I might have to hold the hand of this Democrat to get something done. I might have to hold the hand of this blue dog conservative Democrat who identifies Representative Buckner with interests downstate Illinois more than they do the interests in the large urban areas of the city of Chicago or other urban areas in our state, or even in the state of California. That we have to find a way to hold these hands and build projects in their areas that provide needs, meet all of the needs and the assistance, so that we can take the vitriol out of politics and overcome the divisions within the states that seeds are being planted right now for disillusion. I really wish we could have heard from Republican legislators pushing back on U.S. troops on the streets of the American people. I think the American people and the preservation, Representative Buckner, of the Constitution itself deserve that kind of leadership. Representative Buckner?
I think you're absolutely right. And for those folks who espouse or portend and pretend to espouse these views, certain views about the infallibility of the Constitution and our founding fathers and the documents that have led us into this time and space in the history of our republic. To not stand up and speak out against that is not just problematic, it's malpractice. And it shows the cowardice in their convictions, right? And so we should call it out. We should call it out when we see it. We should be very honest and clear and concise about it, because here's the truth. The truth of the matter is that as we go through this reckoning that this country is currently engaged in, those folks who emerge on the other side with the consent of the governed and the consent of the people will be those who spoke truth to power, who had honest conversations about where we are, where we're going, and how we're going to get there.
I appreciate that, Representative. Let me bring Pastor Dix in this, because Pastor Dix, Dr. King said, I'm 60 years old, by the way, 65 years ago, maybe 70 years ago, that 11 o'clock on Sunday morning is the most segregated hour of the week in the United States. I don't see any progress amongst the brethren or the sisterin in any evidence that they have come together in any way, shape, or form in the last 70 years. In fact, it's worse today than it was then. And so what are y'all doing over there in the church?
So, I mean, great question. I'm glad you brought it up. Couple things I'll say. Part of my experience before I came to Fort Wayne is I led a truly multi-ethnic congregation in the city of Gary, Indiana. Our congregation was 50% Black, 35% white, and 15% Latino. You have to have at least 20% to become a truly multi-ethnic congregation or multicultural. Most congregations that claim that are nothing more than multicolored, which is a completely different dynamic. So I understand the power of the gospel to transform lives. We had to manage culture on a daily basis. We had to look at each other as neighborly. We had to find a way to love one another. And we also understood this very clear dynamic. Everyone is equal at the foot of the cross. We all need what God has to offer equally as people. Now, what has happened in the church is that when you look at the book of 2 Corinthians, and Paul is talking about, and we celebrate this idea of we're new creatures in Christ in 2 Corinthians 5:17. But we don't read the 18th verse, which talks about God giving us the ministry of reconciliation. That is given to the body. And so the church really is the best vehicle to lead reconciliation in this country. But that can't happen as long as we are co-opted by the political designations of our day. And I think the divisions that happen in the church is because the priority of the church today is not the gospel of Jesus, which teaches us to care for the poor and those who don't have, and to love our enemies as ourselves, to do good to them that mistreat us. That's not the ethic the church is using today. The ethic the church is using in many cases is either community separation or nationalism that calls people to save America rather than to be more concerned with saving souls.
Well, you know, I'm going to push back a little bit on that, just a little bit, Reverend Dix, because I know you can handle it. My pushback is that there is no incentive for me as a Christian and an African-American Christian who comes from a liberation theological perspective as a former representative to do anything different than what I'm hearing Black preachers talk about. There's just no, if I got y'all, if y'all got my back, I'm going to say exactly what I believe, and it works for me theologically, it works for me politically, because y'all got my back. But it seems to me there is no coming together within the body of Christ where my courage comes from multi-denominational Christianity, where Black pastors and evangelical pastors have gotten together, and we together are fighting for health care for all. So when I stand on the floor, I know I'm speaking for these Christians and not just these Christians. And so I make that argument also to Representative Buckner, because I think we're not going to do anything different than what the religious and spiritual community is demanding of us at any given hour. Hence, our courage comes from our faith in this moment.
If I could just real quickly comment on that. I think the key is that, and we're probably not as far apart as we think, because I am a firm believer in what comes across the pulpit ends up in the ears of the people. And if you are preaching separation, and that happens very clearly in the church community, when I talk about the wider Christian community across the country, if you're preaching that, then no, people aren't going to have your back, Representative Jackson or Representative Buckner. Certain people are not going to have your back. But that goes back to the point of understanding what the church's role is in society. You started this show with the issue of separation in church and state. On a administrative level, government wise, yes, but a moral community operates in the ideal of what is truth, not subjective truth, but what is objective truth. Are there people who benefit from keeping people poor? Absolutely. Are there people who benefit from the divisions that are in our country? Absolutely. And until we start speaking to that, I have and I'll finish with this real quickly. I have a good friend who's a white pastor in the Southern Baptist. We probably couldn't be more disagreeable in terms of where we come from, more divided. But we found a way during the President Obama's administration to have open and honest communication because we sat down with a respect for one another.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr., listening to Jesse Jackson Jr. show on KBLA Talk 1580. I have a similar question I'd like to pose to the representative when we come forward. Representative Cam Buckner on the Jesse Jackson Jr. show, and Reverend Dix when we come forward.
While you're stuck in traffic, we can at least bring you up to speed on the news of the day. You're listening to Jesse Jackson Jr. only on KBLA Talk 1580.
Hi, I'm LA City Councilmember Curran Price, inviting you to the 30th anniversary of the Central Avenue Jazz Festival, Saturday, September the 20th, from 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. We've got 4 pavilions, 3 stages of live music, plus food, fun, and a marketplace all along historic Central Avenue between MLK Boulevard and Vernon Ave. Our featured acts this year are Gregory Porter, Pancho Sanchez, and Jasmine Horde at the 30th anniversary of the Central Avenue Jazz Festival, Saturday, September 20th, 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. along Central Avenue between MLK Boulevard and Vernon Avenue. Come out and bring the whole family because this legendary celebration is free. For more information, go to centralavjazzfest.com. I'm LA Councilmember Curran Price, and I absolutely approve this message.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580 is committed to self-care and community well-being. Walk Good LA was formed in June 2020, inspired by the Black Lives Matter movement and the beginning stages of the COVID-19 pandemic. What began as a few minutes of breath work and yoga meditation before protests against police brutality turned into a safe space for the community to heal in hard times. The immensely positive response from the community transformed the momentum into a movement. Today, Walk Good LA is a Black and Brown-led community wellness organization based in Los Angeles. They provide spaces for healing through community yoga classes, guided meditations, hikes, run clubs, and other activations throughout Los Angeles that attract hundreds of members weekly. With the help of Propel and Michael B. Jordan, they now have a yoga and wellness studio in Los Angeles called the Walk Good Yard. To join their mailing list and connect with healing spaces, please visit walkgoodla.org. That's walkgoodla.org. Or find them on Instagram at walkgoodla. This is a community call to action, a community call to healing from KBLA Talk 1580.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580, connecting you with services and solutions. LA County's new Justice Care and Opportunities Department, or JCOD, is here to support justice-involved individuals and their families. The JCOD Support Center is now taking calls at 1-833 LACJCOD. That's 1-833-522-5263. Available 7 days a week from 6 a.m. to 11 p.m. The Support Center is your one-stop shop for reentry issues and court support. They offer court reminders, connections to local services, transportation assistance for housing, court appearances, and childcare. The JCOD hotline provides personalized help to connect you with services that you need. And don't forget to check out justiceconnect.org for more information. Remember, it's free and available every day at 1-833-522-5263. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
The following is a paid advertisement by Family Vacation Getaways with the purpose of soliciting sales of vacation ownership. For complete details, please visit fvgradio.com. If you want a 100% complimentary stay at a luxury resort in Cancun, airfare not included, then Family Vacation Getaways is your ticket to paradise. See website for complete details. We're giving away 5 days and 4 nights to the first 50 callers who can name an animal that lays eggs and is not a bird. An animal that lays eggs and is not a bird. Do you know it? Call now, 800-868-6431, 800-868-6431. You're also eligible for an exciting bonus vacation to Orlando, Florida for just $498. And don't worry about anything ruining your plans. We can extend your travel up to 18 months. Name an animal that lays eggs and is not a bird, and get a complimentary Cancun resort stay and an optional bonus vacation to Orlando for just $498. What are you waiting for? Call 800-868-6431, 800-868-6431, and give us your answer. The proceeding is not a contest and is a paid advertisement by Family Vacation Getaways and not sponsored by this program or its affiliates.
Now back to more of Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. Welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. In our next hour on Wealthy Wednesdays will be none other than Dr. S. Todd Urey. He is both a minister and a practicing lawyer, one foot in the pulpit, another foot in the courtroom, but both feet in reality. He'll be joining us in the next hour. But in this hour, I'm particularly honored that the Assistant Majority Leader of the Illinois House of Representatives, Representative Cam Buckner, is our special guest, and Reverend Dix from Pilgrim Church in Indiana, Fort Wayne, Indiana, is our guest in the remaining hour of our program. And because I want to raise this question with Representative Buckner, I'm going to leave some time at the end of the program, of course, for Reverend Dix to close us out on a word of hope. That'll be about 3 minutes left in the program at the top of the hour. I do want to say this. When I speak to African Americans in urban areas, there's crime, these are some of the issues. There's crimes, there's jobs, there's, disparate treatment. There are the long commute times that African Americans and the issues that we know too well as Black people. Then when I moved to the suburban area of my district, also largely African American, it's about commute times, it's about taxes, it's about long drives to work, it's about funding schools. When I get to the rural areas of my district, it's about farm subsidies. There's also a little bit of a racial component, I might add, that they see us as upstate and we have everything and they have nothing downstate. I think that's something that people have to work through. But I see another dynamic, and I think Cam Buckner can probably attest to this. Politicians come through our churches, Black and white, on Sunday during election season, and they speak in our pulpits, and we have open arms in our Christological thinking. But in the 17 years that I was in Congress, I think I preached in 3 white churches 3 times in 17 years. I'm not familiar with white churches that are interested in my spiritual perspective, my spiritual interpretation of biblical reality. Hence, I'm welcome to attend their church, but the pulpit's not open to us. Cam, have you seen that dynamic?
Absolutely. And when you think about it, a lot of it is a remnant of our history, Congressman, and how we got here. We all know that for generations, the Black church has been the civic home of Black America, where politics, economics, and faith have been intertwined, right? It's where Dr. King launched campaigns. It's where your father and Harold Washington built coalitions. It's where many Black politicians still go to connect with communities. And we also expect that from white politicians who may represent us as well. The church has provided legitimacy for a long time. If you can stand in the pulpit, you can stand up for the people. That's often been the way we look at it. But I think historically, many white churches have been apolitical spaces, or when they have been political, they've been aligned with conservative causes or causes outside of the realm of what is helpful for those in our community. And so when you look at that, it really is indicative of the divide that we have. When we are engaging in our faith tradition, it is usually centered around a movement to do something different and to do something better, and using what we can get from the church and spirituality to help us get to what that end goal is. However, in many majority white spiritual traditions, for them, the movement is just keeping things the same, right? And so there is a different relationship with the political process for them than there is with us. But that is absolutely a true statement that I've seen in real time.
Reverend Dix, our churches are open to this dialogue. It doesn't seem, or has never existed since Dr. King said 11 o'clock on Sunday morning is the most segregated of the hour of the week, that we can come into white churches and are welcomed to share from our historical and spiritual and Exodus, if you will, interpretation of the scriptures, what our slave experience is, that they are willing to listen to, or in any way that would even move them.
So I think on Sunday morning is one way to advance that conversation. Now, I served for 30 years in the city of Gary, which is a predominantly Black community, and I can tell you right now that the same dynamic exists on the other side. We're not inviting white candidates or white preachers into our spaces to share with us. Sunday morning is an intently personal thing for people in general. But here's the thing. I trained a group of 40 white people to understand urban ministry. And when I'm saying trained, they came with zero understanding of what it meant to minister in an urban context. And I had to be open to questions that they had that might have been uncomfortable to hear, and certainly probably not a good place to discuss is on a Sunday morning. So what I'm saying is that these conversations need to start with pastors behind the scenes and things like that to talk about what those experiences are like. We had a conservative representative, you may know him, Jim Banks, here in Fort Wayne. I invited Jim to come to our church and hear from 25 pastors about their experiences with law enforcement. He left there crying, not fake tears, but real tears, because he heard the experience.
Pastors with experience with law enforcement.
With experience, yes, including myself. And when he heard that, he came out saying, of all his years in Congress, that's the most impactful meeting that he had. It was because somebody had to open the dialogue. He had no one else to advise him on what the police were doing, because it was outside of his sphere of environmental sphere. Now, when you bring it home, it had an impact on him, especially as someone who permits himself to be a believer.
I understand that. I know that I reversed the order a moment ago and asked Reverend Dix to give us a word of hope, but Representative Buckner, you're more than capable of giving us a word of hope for this hour. Representative Buckner?
Yeah, I'll just say, and Reverend Buckner was my grandfather. He'll be happy to hear you say that. Maybe one day. At the end
you
of the
might
day,
not want this, brother.
At the end of the day, I think we have to remember that our politics doesn't have to stay stuck in division. Just like Paul told the Corinthians, just like Jesus showed up in the story of the Good Samaritan, we're stronger when we see each other as neighbors, not enemies. Whether you're from Chicago or Carbondale, whether you are from Fort Wayne or Gary, whether you worship in the Black church or the white church, we all want safe communities, good schools, a good future for our kids. So if we can hold on to that truth, then there's reason to believe that tomorrow can be better than today is. And my hope is that we choose compassion over contempt and unity over ego, and that we never forget that we all rise or fall together.
It doesn't get much better than that. Reverend Dix, we have about a minute and a half.
I just want to remind everybody, first of all, thank you. Great to meet you, Representative Buckner. I think the most important thing is to go back to, as believers, what is it that we're called to do? The ministry of reconciliation, that is a medical term in the Greek text, and it really means the bringing together that which was broken. Relationships across racial lines have been broken in this country, maybe never have actually been together. We have the responsibility of bringing that together, the mending of that brokenness, and that is done when we respect one another, mutually theological hospitality, and being able to talk to one another in the spirit of love, even if we disagree.
Representative Buckner, thank you for your time on the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show.
Thank you, Congressman.
Reverend Dix, I appreciate you so much, and thank you for being on the show as well.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. Always glad to be a part.
On the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show on KBLA Talk 1580, more on Wealthy Wednesdays with Dr. S. Todd Urey when we come forward.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.
I'm Amber Payton with BIN News Now. Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker and Black Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson are blasting President Trump over his threat to send the National Guard to Chicago.
It has never come up. It never came up during the campaign. It's never come up in the first 2 years.
Johnson says no one asked for troops, while Pritzker accused Trump of, quote, losing it, end quote, and possibly suffering from dementia. Former President Barack Obama calls the assassination of conservative activist Charlie Kirk a tragedy, saying political differences do not justify violence. Speaking in Pennsylvania, Obama said while he disagreed with Kirk's ideas, he was a young man with loved ones who are grieving and stressed democracy requires disagreement without violence. And rapper Cardi B revealed on CBS Mornings that she's expecting a baby with New England Patriots star Stephon Diggs. The news comes ahead of her new album, Am I the Drama, that releases Friday, and her Little Miss Drama tour in February. Get BIN News Now on demand 24/7 on the iHeartRadio app.
San Diego's events calendar is full of flavor. Dig into local wine and food festivals, treat the family to kid-inspired deals all October, and get a taste of glory at the Breeders' Cup World Championship. Plan your trip now at sandiego.org/awesome all year. Funded in part with City of San Diego Tourism Marketing District Assessment Funds.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
The Chargers got some good news Wednesday morning concerning All-Pro linebacker Khalil Mack. The 34-year-old Mack will not miss the rest of the season after suffering an elbow injury in the first quarter of Sunday night's win at Las Vegas. The Chargers have yet to say how long Mack will be sidelined. The Chargers play their home opener Sunday against Denver at SoFi. UCLA interim football coach Tim Skipper met with the media for the first time Wednesday morning. The 47-year-old African-American, a native of New Orleans, was promoted on Sunday to replace Deshaun Foster. An 0-3 start prompted UCLA officials to fire Foster on Sunday. Skipper was an assistant at Fresno State before joining Foster's staff this season. UCLA has a bye this weekend. First game for Skipper as head coach is September 27th at Northwestern. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
Are you ready to be a part of the conversation that will help shape our nation's future? Get ready to join us for the Left Coast Forum, Saturday, October 25th at LA Trade Tech, where progressive voices will come together to tackle the issues that matter most to working families across Los Angeles and beyond. From economic justice to climate action, from healthcare to housing, we're bringing together the brightest minds and most passionate advocates for real solutions and real change. With workshops, 2 major keynote addresses, and a closing reception with great music and good food. It's the Left Coast Forum, where your voice matters and your ideas take action. Saturday, October 25th at LA Trade Tech. Brought to you by KBLA Talk 1580 and the LA Progressive. The future won't wait, and neither should you. Mark your calendar now to be there and be heard. Stay tuned to KBLA Talk 1580 for more details.
Welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show on KBLA Talk 1580. Whew. That was a heated conversation and very thoughtful with two of my favorite contributors. Reverend Dix is extremely thoughtful and very much engaged in community. And Representative Cam Buckner, the Assistant Majority Leader in the Illinois House of Representatives, is in touch with African American and legislators all across our country. And he seemingly sees, understands, and has some solutions to the divisions that exist in our nation's body politic. And I'm particularly grateful for his participation today. I am so excited about that last program that I'm actually standing for the first time on my show. I got out of my seat, moved my chair over, and I'm actually really engaged here in this moment, because sitting just doesn't seem to capture how I feel in this moment. I'm the author of a book, A More Perfect Union, Advancing New American Rights, and the co-author of that book, the late Frank Watkins. Today would have been his birthday. He would have been, I believe, 84 years old. He died in 2019 of the COVID, and I certainly want Uncle Frank to know that he is extremely missed. He was the architect of my father's campaigns in 1984 and 1988. He saw something in me, and by 1995, he came up with this idea that he thought I could be the first African-American president. So a seat became available in the city of Chicago. He managed it, ran it with perfection, and I was elected to Congress in 1995 and had the great privilege of serving for 17 years. I'm also the author of another book since my incarceration experience, The Finger of God, which is a word construction that does exist in the Constitution of the United States, that really speaks to character and the spirit energy of what the architects on September 17th, 1787 thought would be maintained over the centuries in terms of the spirit energy of a shepherd-like president as president of the United States. Clearly, that has been lost. We'll have to uncover it, rediscover it, and move it forward if we're going to bring people together, because the spirit energy does come not from a Democrat or a Republican. It comes from a theological experiment placed in the Constitution. That book is called The Finger of God. It is available on Amazon.com. Now, with that said, I do want to say this. I think that our political leadership in this nation at this hour draws its strength from the spiritual and theological perspectives that they gain in community, that they gain existentially, and through their own life experiences. They bring all of that when they go to the legislative body or when they run for office. They bring their spiritual core. They bring every sermon they've ever heard. They've seen stuff in the community that they want to fix. They bring all that with them when they show up to a legislative body. I think that's true of presidents of the United States too, the vast majority of whom have been white men, the first 15 of whom owned slaves, and then Abraham Lincoln, and then, of course, all the way up to Woodrow Wilson. Some very nasty segregationist presidents existed really until Lyndon Johnson and the Kennedys in the 60s, where there seemed to be some movement away from it. And then, of course, the racial code words of Goldwater and that era, and the Reagan era, and some of the code words that are really manifesting themselves right now in the present era of Donald John Trump and the MAGA world. Now, with that said, I don't think we're going to be any bigger than our pastors are going to be as elected officials and politicians, because we rely upon them for our spiritual energy. And some of what's going on here, Dr. Yuri, is in that spiritual space, that it is the spirit energy of the Gospels, the spirit energy of the church, the spirit energy of the movement that gives us the courage to either reach out, to retract, to fight or flight. The spirit energy has commanded us and our faith through these difficult times. Dr. Yuri, we have about a minute before we come forward, 2 minutes before we come forward. I'd like your initial thoughts, and I certainly want to welcome you forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show.
I'm always glad to hang out with you on Wednesday, but after you laid all that out and then said, all right, I got a couple of minutes to give me your
get started.
Look, I'm still trying to get my initial thoughts. I'm trying to
Okay, I can pull some of it back. Let me try it this way, because we do have just about a minute before we come forward. This has been a fairly extraordinary week, Dr. Yuri, and 1 foot in the pulpit, 1 foot in the church, 1 foot in the courtroom. The dynamic in your space in this minute has to be fairly extraordinary.
It is, but let me start with the framework. You mentioned shepherding. There's a stewardship obligation in the Constitution that has been abandoned, and that is to be the caretaker of the goodwill and the well-being of the persons that the Constitution speaks to and speaks for. And so in the course of this dynamic, whatever the founders believed that they saw, subsequent generations have now either ignored it or they have betrayed it. And that's where we have to have a significant conversation.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. You're listening to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show, Wealthy Wednesdays with Dr. S. Todd Yuri on KBLA Talk 1580. More with the good doctor when we come forward.
It's afternoon drive time with Jesse Jackson Jr. Only on KBLA Talk 1580.
With a KBLA Talk 1580 editorial, I'm Dr. Nicolai Corte. Let's preserve Black land stories before they're lost forever. I want to personally invite you to be a part of something historic. As journalist in residence for the Black Land Lost Narrative Archive Project, I've joined forces with powerhouse attorney and social justice champion George Fothery, the man who helped make history by delivering justice to the Bruce family in Manhattan Beach, securing the first known return of land unjustly taken from Black owners by a local government. That victory was monumental, but it was just the beginning. For generations, Black families have acquired land through grit, faith, and determination, only to lose it through violence, legal loopholes, forced sales, and systematic racism. What's been taken goes far beyond dirt and deeds. It's the erasure of wealth, identity, and legacy. That's why we've launched the Black Land Lost Narrative Archive Project, a national effort to collect, protect, and preserve the stories of Black land lost before they're buried, forgotten, or erased altogether. Because there's power in telling Black stories, there is resistance in remembering, and there's justice in being seen and heard. This is where you come in. We're inviting you to be a part of this historic Black narrative archive. If you or someone you know has experienced land loss, displacement, or forced property sales, your story deserves to be heard and remembered. Your story belongs in this archive. Your truth matters not just to your family, but to our collective future. Visit blacklandlost.org today. Fill out our simple intake form and add your voice to the National Archive of Remembrance, Resilience, and Reckoning. Let's make these stories live on, not in whispers, but on the record. With a KBLA Talk 1580 editorial, I'm Dr. Nicolai Corte, and as always, we welcome your feedback.
It's a classic odor tale. You fried fish for dinner, cleaned up, but the smell is still in the house. And the neighbors are coming over for game night. They're on their way. And then you spray Febreze Air Mist. Febreze Air starts working instantly to fight even your toughest odors, so you go from fish to fresh like that. Now, all you have to worry about is Pam cheating at charades.
Breathe happy, Febreze, la 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 la.
We're with Bridget, whose husband won't be home for months, and whose daughter is due any day. We're with Mike, who's leaving home to protect his family and yours. We're with all service members and their families who need community, connection, and maybe a bit of magic. Are you with them? Learn more at uso.org today.
Now back to more of Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. You're listening to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show and Wealthy Wednesdays with Dr. S. Todd Yuri. He is both a lawyer and a practicing pastor of a church in Baltimore, Maryland, Douglas Memorial Community Church. Dr. Yuri, welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show.
I had a chance to catch my breath, so I think I'm ready now.
Right, Dr. Yuri, before the break, on the extreme MAGA side, which includes some significant evangelicals, and over here on the extreme liberation theology side of liberal and democratic politics, and over there on the Republican side of politics, you talked about the ministry, the shepherding that both sides have to the fidelity of the Constitution itself. And you said that you believe some of that has been lost. Dr. Yuri.
Yeah, I think we're living in the lostness of this moment. On one hand, you have the very aggressive, even violent assault on the principles in the Constitution, particularly the Bill of Rights. And then on the other side, you have kind of the flip side of the same coin that Dr. King warned us about, right? The kind of neoliberal kind of hypothesizing, right? We don't fix the problem because we need the problem to allow us to continue to engage in this conversation. And so it's almost like chasing the remaining pieces around on a chessboard because you don't want to declare stalemate, because in the process, it means you will then have to push the reset button. You'll have to start over. And so while we are fending off, on one hand, a very aggressive administrative state of all things, one who came into office saying he didn't trust the administrative state, now is using that same administrative state to violate the very rights of not just people who may not be citizens, but everybody else, right? Lottie-dottie everybody is what we would say in the church. On the other side, the neoliberal side can't seem to find its voice, can't seem to figure out what is its counter message. What's the argument? What is the resistance? We've heard a lot of that coming from folks who had previously, found affinity with the Democratic Party, but they're trying to figure out what is this party really standing for?
Can I press you on that right there for a second? Because I know that you and I, for example, come from this theological, faith-based space, and we bring that to our politics, right? I don't know many on the neoliberal side of the left equation who bring their faith to this politics. They don't mention the church. They don't mention Jesus. They don't mention, the God of the Exodus. They don't mention Moses. They don't mention but he rose again. In fact, the Christ that they serve is still on the cross with nails in his feet and all of that. And of course, you step in the Black church, there's no Jesus on the cross because we believe in the resurrection. So we keep it moving. So we have a different symbology that keeps us moving forward towards some divine space. For them, the religion is over and it died on a cross into year zero. And they're driven by policy and they're trying to tweak their treatise to be the right policy and political message. Well, we're over here holding on to the cross. We're over here holding on to something else that drives our politics and our existence. I wanted to hear your thoughtfulness on that right there.
Yeah, there may not be a codified religious framework, but there's still a worldview. And I think when we talk about what's the worldview, what's the perspective we bring, right? As African descended people, we have a variety of religious affinities. They are not all in the Protestant Christian line, but they all evolve from an awareness that there is this higher power, this power beyond our ability to kind of capture it completely in the gray matter between our ears, the mystery that allows us to kind of operate in sync, that inspired our ancestors to be able to do something as creative as perform the architectural design of what we call the pyramids. There's a reason why Hormuzd, the Sphinx, is facing the eastern horizon, recognizing that that's the direction from which the new day dawns. And so that was BC, right? Or BCE, if you want to be technical in terms of modern theological frame. And so it's the worldview that we always bring the mystery, the curiosity of the power of God beyond our ability to reduce it to mere words, and figure out how do we align with and yield to that power to create a better outcome than for just ourselves. That's not the conversation that folks are going to be inclined to have. But I promise you, while they tell us they go to Bible studies, you will know this better because you've been a member of Congress. You know that there's a chaplain. There are chaplains that actually attend to the spiritual nurture of the members. But in that discourse, how does that translate? How do we go from Bible study and prayer meeting? And when we get to the amen, we can't get to the results that actually leads to the improvement of the quality of life of the people we serve. There are too many people out here struggling, too many people in pain, too many people in despair, too many people in fear for us to be in this predicament if we are still sensitive to and aware of that finger of God that you've pointed out our founders had some sense about when the Constitution was written.
Dr. Erie, I played yesterday a clip on April 3rd, 1968, of Martin Luther King Jr.'s last speech at Mason Temple. And he said, "I'm not fearing any man. Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord." I'm not worried any longer about that. And obviously, in that particular religious framework, Dr. King found a strength in the context of that church, in the context of that theology, in an acceptance of the outcome of his ministry and his life, considered some of the most prophetic words for a man who 24 hours later would be dead, who would be laying on the balcony at the Lorraine Motel. I juxtapose that against the tragic events of a week ago. And there, in the final words of this particular individual, there were no religious references. There were no platitudes to the idea of spirituality, to the nation that we might build together, one nation under God, indivisible. No, I heard no Lincoln. I heard no Kennedy. I heard no Johnson. I heard, just division. But in the post space, less than a week later, I'm hearing a spiritual identification that did not exist on that day with the followers of what happened on that day. And it's now taking on its own religious, if you will, significance, therefore embodying this idea of the struggle for white minority rights now has a martyr and its own champion.
Yeah, let's do a little replay and think about the audience as you were framing the question. Your father's voice returned to me in discussing what was actually going on in Memphis that night, and that there was really, I think Dr. King, your father said, may have not been feeling well. That when they got to Mason Temple, the crowd was swelled and they were anticipating, and they actually had to call back to the hotel, as I recall your father's telling of the story, to appeal to Dr. King to come, because your father, Dr. Abernathy, knew that while they might be good ambassadors, that wasn't going to meet the moment. And so the audience needed to hear a word of hope and possibility over and against the face of the resistance. What Dr. King says is, I may not get there with you, but we as a people, we the people will get to the promised land. Juxtapose that with the audience on last week, which was really about challenge and antagonism. Ask me what you think and I'll shoot it down. It's kind of an impromptu public debate. And the questions that were raised just before the fatal shot was fired was about mass shootings. Now, how odd to even have that as part of the discourse, that out of the dysfunction of mass violence that is not seen on this scale anywhere else on the planet, in that moment, one shot takes his life. And then, as you mentioned, you talk about being a martyr. That's different than what we even see from the recordings from Calvary, when Jesus is even hanging. The first words that he utters is, "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do." It's a different kind of compassion. It's a different framework. And so this selfishness that has overcome our politics, where we see particular self-interest, boards debating whether or not they're going to approve a $1 trillion compensation package for a single individual, over and against just such rampant loss. You can move homeless people out of public spaces because we don't want to see that in America. That's where we've got a conflict. And I don't know if it's necessarily a matter of poor religion or not having a worldview that informs what values we bring to the conversation, but something is amiss in America, and it is playing out in real time.
You know, I see in that final statement of Martin Luther King Jr. an elevation of the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments, that human rights matter against the backdrop of the Gospels, that the promised land out of Egypt into a promised land is a journey from slavery and discrimination and racism to this land flowing with milk and honey. I see something else emerging constitutionally out of the tragic events of last week, an elevation of the Second Amendment itself to protect God-given rights, that God-given rights aren't inherently your rights because you are born into this world as a human being, but that you are born into this world holding a musket, holding a 9mm, holding an AK-47 or some high-powered rifle. This is a different kind of ethos that is emerging, and it is, Dr. Yuri, taking on, if you will, whether we acknowledge it on our side of town or not, a kind of religious significance.
Yeah. Yeah, you know, it's kind of like, what did I see some years ago? One of the scheduled themes for Sunday morning was "Bring Your Gun to Church" Day.
Yeah, how about that?
I think it kind of speaks to a different kind of ailment in the country, particularly when we study the history of the Second Amendment. We have to remember that the Second Amendment, the right to bear arms, to be part of the militia that would defend the interest of this young country, was not something that extended to people who look like you and me. And so there was really this fear. The reason the Second Amendment got to be so important is that the fear of revolt over the issue of the indignity and the dehumanization of the trafficking of African bodies was so worrisome in the plantation system that they had to create basically a rule and a framework that would keep weapons out of the hands of the oppressed. And it is in that context that now folks who are afraid that the oppressed are going to come back and get them, the folks who are suffering and struggling, as if there aren't any white folks who are struggling or hungry or poor or need health care, that somehow or other the boogeyman's going to come get them in the middle of the night and cause them concern. And so now we've got to have more guns on the street than we have people, because we have to feed the paranoia that somehow or other this roughly 12% representation of the national population is going to somehow turn upside down the principles in the Constitution against the interest of white elites.
My thinkings and my sentiments exactly. Particularly grateful for this call with you this afternoon, Dr. Yuri. I think that the more we talk this through, it serves as a kind of collective therapy for what we're witnessing. I never thought that second Reconstruction could end on this note, and inaugurate, quite possibly, a national movement for white minority rights. With the tragic events of last week, more than 32,000 inquiries have been made for Turning Point chapters, organizations all across the United States, in every county, in every city, in every corner, in every hamlet. More than 18,000 inquiries in less than 48 hours to start Turning Point organizations in states and cities throughout the country. I am profoundly concerned about what we have inaugurated here and what even Mrs. Kirk has said. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. This is KBLA Talk 1580. More when we come forward with Dr. Todd Urey.
It's afternoon drive time with Jesse Jackson Jr. Only on KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Amber Payton with BIN News Now. Plans for Jay-Z-backed casinos in Times Square and Hudson Yards are off the table after a community board rejected them. Black New York City Mayor Eric Adams and New York Governor Kathy Hochul supported the projects, but residents pushed back.
Did the benefits you denied this community and this city and state, you have to live with that history forever.
Developers say the decision cost the area economic opportunities. Former Virginia Tech star Michael Vick is brushing off rumors linking him to his alma mater's coaching vacancy. Vick says his focus is on leading HBCU Norfolk State University, where he's in his first season as head coach. And Black Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass told fire stations not to lower flags in honor of Charlie Kirk, even after President Trump ordered them at half staff. A memo directed stations to keep flags at full staff unless told otherwise by the mayor, but some stations went against the order. Get BIN News Now on demand 24/7 on the iHeartRadio app.
San Diego's events calendar is full of flavor. Dig into local wine and food festivals, treat the family to kid-inspired deals all October, and get a taste of glory at the Breeders' Cup World Championship. Plan your trip now at sandiego.org/awesome all year. Funded in part with City of San Diego Tourism Marketing District Assessment Fund.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
The Chargers got some good news Wednesday morning concerning All-Pro linebacker Khalil Mack. The 34-year-old Mack will not miss the rest of the season after suffering an elbow injury in the first quarter of Sunday night's win at Las Vegas. The Chargers have yet to say how long Mack will be sidelined. The Chargers play their home opener Sunday against Denver at SoFi. UCLA interim football coach Tim Skipper met with the media for the first time Wednesday morning. The 47-year-old African-American, a native of New Orleans, was promoted on Sunday to replace Deshaun Foster. An 0-3 start prompted UCLA officials to fire Foster on Sunday. Skipper was an assistant at Fresno State before joining Foster's staff this season. UCLA has a bye this weekend. First game for Skipper as head coach is September 27th at Northwestern. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
This is KBLA Talk 1580. Talk radio. That's music to your ears. We're unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
I'm Reverend Gerald, the life coach. Is someone you love struggling with addiction and mental illness? Is improving your family's health important? Want to leave a legacy that your family can grow? Are you ready to enhance your perception of life experiences? Then wake up weekends at 7 a.m. with Urban Family Focus and get the wisdom, opportunity, resources, and motivation to live your best life. Join the conversation on Urban Family Focus Saturday and Sunday at 7 a.m.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black.
Dr. Renee here. Did you know this time of year is considered peak asthma season because we typically see a spike in asthma-related hospitalizations? If you have asthma and are having difficulty breathing despite medication, it's time to check in with your doctor so you can help avoid landing yourself in the hospital this season. To learn more about managing your asthma, visit www.luma-edu.com. That's LUMA-edu.com. This message is brought to you by Amgen and AstraZeneca.
When you turn to the Employment Development Department, we'll help you get there.
Whether it's support for you and your family while you find a new job, or the resources to focus on your recovery after illness or injury, we can help you move forward. From support while you bond with your newborn, to helping serve your family while your partner serves our country. Your EDD. We'll help you get there. For more information, visit edd.ca.gov.
If you're like me, 60 and retired, making ends meet, especially here at the supermarket and drugstore, is tough. I'm so blessed to have found benefitscheckup.org. It's a free and confidential website from the National Council on Aging that connected me to $1,200 a year in programs that help pay for food, medicine, utilities, and more. Maybe it can help you. benefitscheckup.org.
You know where you want to go in life, and City National Bank can help. City National knows the dedication it takes to build your vision for the future into a reality, and our team is here for you. We have a wide range of options to help, from personal savings accounts to interest-bearing money market savings accounts and more, all designed to help you get where you want to go. City National, here for every stage of the journey. Learn more at cnb.com. City National Bank is a subsidiary of Royal Bank of Canada, member FDIC.
You're listening to Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580.
Jackson Jr., welcome forward, Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. This is Wealthy Wednesdays with Dr. S. Todd Yeary. He is an extraordinary leader, an extraordinary pastor and lawyer, and he provides us with some insights on many issues that we really, really can't see, but we can understand certainly in the realm of spirit. And just before I bring Dr. Yeary back, I want to comment on this idea of seeing words in spirit. My producer and I have been working for the last 10 years or so on this idea of words containing spirit. And when I see the commander of the army and repriever pardoner and one person who has that function, not everybody can see it. Most people see two job responsibilities, but the word "and" is like a plus sign. How do I add command of an army and militia with a repriever pardoner? Well, there's only one way to add that together. That's David and Jesus. And only one person comes to function in the lineage of David for all of the people. So words matter. They put something in the Constitution called the finger of God. It's right there, but they put it there as a function to be performed by an enlightened and spiritually engaged people who vote for someone with character to function in the absence of disciples, in the absence of Jesus of Nazareth, for all of us. Reverend Dr. Todd Yeary is both a lawyer and a theologian. He is in the business of reading words, studying words, understanding testimony, understanding scripture, looking for meaning between words that the words themselves on their face don't necessarily convey, but in those words exists all of eternity when properly seen and properly interpreted and properly understood by the man of God. And so I want to thank Dr. Yeary for his insights on the careful use of words in this space. That's not happening enough, Dr. Yeary, in our nation's politics, either by Democrats or Republicans. They're not carefully using their words.
Yeah, I think they, in many instances, underestimate the importance of words. Even as we reflect on what the Christian scriptures tell us, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God, and there was nothing that was created without it. There's the African principle of nomo, the power of words to create. As a matter of fact, one of my colleagues actually had a pretty good saying after the unfortunate incident of last week. And he said, we have to remember that words create worlds.
Help us with that. Words create worlds. WORLDS. Help us with that, Dr. Gary.
WRLD, right? The words are the expressions of the ideas and the sentiments and the motivations of the heart. And so when we begin to speak it, our actions then follow suit to begin to build it. And those worlds can either be of benefit or of harm. And so when we think about what we say, right, and how we say it, many times there's a response because there are cues that are given to others to think about what their response ought to be, what their actions might need to be. And so we recognize, I think, in many instances, that we are a little too cavalier, too casual with our words, as opposed to being intentional, making them a part of our praxis of not only how we communicate one with the other, but how we live out this moment where human rights do indeed matter, that human dignity is a human right. And if we're not going to protect the dignity of the person, because there are some people who it is believed don't deserve it or are not entitled to it, then we will be part of the conscription that's going to build a world that's going to look very much like those we read about in the history books, except this time it's going to be much more resistant to change and modification than it was before.
You know, I grew up in a world where my grandparents, particularly my grandmother and my great-grandmother, used a switch to get my attention. I grew up in a world where my mother and my father used a belt to get my attention. In the world in which I live, I've never raised my hand one time towards any of my children. Tone, words, expressions, sentiments matter in how I believe and pray they treat me in the sunset of my life. That I didn't do anything to them that may be some cloud of lack of joy or inferiority that says, I'm not going to help daddy, I'm not going to help mommy, I'm not going to do this because they did this to me when I was young. That in my space, unless I'm missing something, doesn't exist, right? So I carefully think that through. I also carefully listen to what other people say, whom I know are masters of words. And when they reprimand me, I feel some type of way when someone who has an unlimited vocabulary is very thoughtful, their spirit is in the right place, their heart and their mind is in the right place, but they take the time to use certain words to reprimand me. I say to myself, the fact that they carefully chose these words mean whatever they just said is real. Man, I got to change something in myself. Now I got some other brothers out here who have limited vocabularies and they say some stuff and I go right back at them the way they came at me because I know they limited vocabulary and their limited thinking comes with all of their mess in it. Now don't throw that stone at me that you don't want thrown back at you. But then I'm careful with the people who understand the language. And that's true on the floor of the Congress. That's true getting on an airplane. That's true when I yield my seat to a lady or stand up when she comes to the table. These are factors in communication that seemingly are all lost in this space. Dr. Uri?
Well, because we got to go further upstream, right? What's happening before the words are formed? What's going on in the embodied experience that's impacting the mind and the heart? The Bible even tells us out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. And so if you are living with heartbreak, the heartbreak of disinvested community, under-resourced neighborhoods, living in the occupation of a military walking up and down the streets because somehow or other you present a different kind of threat that requires a much more assertive response than what we saw on January 6th, which was, as we found out later, was nothing more than a tour of the Capitol.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Isn't that something? How about that?
So we got to go upstream, and we have to got to deal with the psychology. The Greek word psyche is mind, but in African spirituality, mind is heart matter, right? What are the sincere drivers that motivate what we desire and how we go about getting it? And if the only way that I can get what I want is at somebody else's expense, then what I've done is I've already created a framework where I have to operate in an exploitative situation to be able to achieve what are otherwise just ends. So it's okay to watch territories get not just invaded, erased, that we see the violence that breaks out, not just overseas, right? The wars look a little different, but the realities are that we got some stuff to do, and we got to get in the head space and the heart space so we can figure out what's coming out of our mouths.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. You're listening to Dr. S. Todd Yeary on the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. More with Dr. S. Todd Yeary when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
While you're stuck in traffic, we can at least bring you up to speed on the news of the day. You're listening to Jesse Jackson Jr. only on KBLA Talk 1580.
Is reviewing life insurance on your to-do list? Now's the perfect time to add it. A friend recently told me that securing life insurance sooner rather than later can help you lock in lower rates for years to come. So I bumped this up on my list and got it done. I called SelectQuote and couldn't believe how easy and affordable life insurance is. I'm 40 and got a $500,000 policy for $16 a month. My husband's also 40 and his $500,000 policy was only $18 a month. Plus, with SelectQuote's same-day coverage, there was no medical exam required, and we were covered by the time we hung up. Knowing I have this checked off my list feels amazing, but the peace of mind knowing my family is protected feels even better.
Call SelectQuote at 1-800-729-7070. That's 1-800-729-7070. Or go to SelectQuote.com to get your free quote today. That's 1-800-729-7070. Details on example rate at SelectQuote.com.
Lena Bloom for the Bail Project. Imagine you're stuck in a jail cell and you can't afford bail and someone offers you a way out. Just plead guilty and you can go home and kiss your kids goodnight. What do you do? What thousands have. You plead guilty whether you are or not. Cash bail makes poverty a crime. That's why the Bail Project helps those who can't afford it while fighting to end cash bail. Because freedom should be free. Brought to you by the Ad Council.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580, connecting you with services and solutions. If you need help getting your resume in order, finding job training, or landing a job, we've got 3 great options for you. First, the City of Los Angeles has WorkSource centers across the area offering free job support. The California Workforce Development Board can help you with everything from GED prep to vocational training at no cost to you. On the federal level, the Department of Labor's American Job Centers offer a full range of services for job seekers and businesses alike. Visit careeronestop.org, or for more info, just call California's Help Center or visit cwdb.ca.gov or call 916-657-1440. For the City of Los Angeles programs, go to ewdd.lacity.gov or call 213-744-7300. All these services are free to help you get your next job. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
Now back to more of Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. Welcome to this final segment and installment of the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show on KBLA Talk 1580. Our very special guest has been none other than Dr. and Professor, theologian, pastor, and attorney an advisor to the Reverend Jesse Jackson, an advisor and former board member to the Reverend Al Sharpton's National Action Network, doing some fairly extraordinary work, not only in Baltimore, but around the country. Dr. Uri, welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show.
It's been great hanging out with you as always. So many profound issues we have to talk about.
Dr. Uri, I know this is our final segment, but in the last segment, we were talking about the idea that words matter and that there seems to be a breakdown in comedy, not just, and I don't mean C-O-M-E-D-Y, comity, C-O-M-I-T-Y, comedy, getting along with people, how we treat our neighbors. Viktor Frankl said in Man's Search for Meaning that between stimulus and response, there is a space. And in that space, man, woman has the opportunity to choose their freedom or to choose their incarceration. That is, to be small, to be locked into your own world or to your own mind, into your own thinking, to lean on your own understanding rather than choose freedom. But the key to the phrase is between stimulus and response. There's a space. We saw the horrific events of a week ago, and that was the stimulus. Some people reacting immediately missed the spirit energy of the moment, and today they're losing their jobs. They reacted in a way that they had not taken advantage of the space between stimulus and response. And now that we have all had an opportunity to understand the sobriety of the moment, I think we are far more careful in choosing the words and the language that we use, not just because of that tragic event, but if we can apply the same principle to the way we treat each other, Dr. Uri, I think we'd build a bigger and better world house.
Well, we would. When you mentioned the World House, that's kind of the frame that Dr. King impressed upon us to think about this engagement, that this thing is bigger than us and there's more going on than what's happening in our particular space. But I want to talk about that the stimulus or the Viktor Frankl, that part.
Yeah, that part.
If what is causing my response, let's think about a baby. Babies don't have words, but they certainly communicate. And if we listen carefully enough, we can associate what is the stimulus and what's the needed response. We know the difference between a wet cry and a cry for hunger or a cry for pain. And those cries get affirmed in the response, the sensitivity to the cries of one who is innocent, can't do for themselves. We lose that over a period of time. We begin to assign certain obligations that are absolute without taking into account that some people are indeed hungry, not because they're not willing to work, but when full employment in this context is an unemployment rate of somewhere around 4% as the norm, there's obviously some disconnect if full employment doesn't equal 100% employment. And it then cannot be assigned to the shiftlessness, the unwillingness of groups of people that somehow or other they just want to take advantage of the government and be on welfare. The most expensive form of welfare in the United States is corporate welfare. And we don't talk about welfare reform in that regard. And so I think as we have these conversations, what is really required is intentionality. Say what you mean and mean what you say, and say it in a way that communicates what it is that you are experiencing, but also, more importantly, what it is that you are expecting. So that in that process, you can now move into kind of an interdependent relationship that allows for give and take and reciprocity.
I don't remember learning this in school. I mean, I just don't remember that my elementary school, high school, or college professors who were imparting information and material to me, that the communication of what Tavis Smiley calls charitable listening, discerning in the space of listening, because listening is obviously a reaction to stimuli, listening carefully, charitably, and then responding appropriately. Bruce Lee said it this way, that he intercepts, the way of the intercepting fist. He intercepted intentionality before a leg or a kick were even thrown. That is, if someone approaches you with the wrong intentionality and stimuli, you know that you need to keep arm's length and maybe even leg length from them, because you need all of your tools because of the telegraphing of stimuli and intentionality. Pastor, that's true when you make your arguments before a judge when you're trying to convince a jury. I assume that's also true when you carefully prepare for a sermon that you deliver on Sunday mornings.
Yeah, in both of those instances, I begin with the context of the source. What is it that they are speaking? Dr. Gardner Taylor, who now resides in the realm of the ancestors, when I was a young preacher and we were at the Progressive Baptist Convention, one year I had him come to preach at the church I was pastoring at the time in Batavia, in the suburbs of Chicago. And he said something that was interesting. He said, in order to be an effective preacher, you've got to walk down the street of the text. Because if you can't experience, albeit in a distant sort of way, what's actually going on, you are going to misinterpret those words. And I think too many times we have folks talking at issues who've never encountered or experienced what it is that the folks who live it every day are actually dealing with. And so in this sense where we are responding to stimuli, what does that look like? We have to also remember that the stimuli is different. And I'll just give you the preamble. Here's the thing that we wrestle with in terms of words. We have on one hand, we've got the Declaration of Independence, words that frame an expectation and an ideal. And then the preamble to the Constitution is particularly profound, but I don't think it carries the inclusiveness at that time that we now expect of it today. We, the people, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity. Well, who's in that? Because if the expectation that privilege, that entitlement only comes to a very narrow group, then my declaration must challenge that out of necessity so that it becomes more inclusive and representative of what folks say it represents in hindsight. We've not experienced that in too many cases, and we've still got more declarations to make.
Dr. Uri, I know that next week you'll be attending the Congressional Black Caucus. What are your expectations in the final minute and a half of what that body should be doing at this hour?
If it were me, I would want to, one, get some updates. What's really going on? We don't need the interpretive analysis. I appreciate the media, but come on, tell us what's happening. What's really going on? What's happening in the room where it happens? But at the same time, do some listening. Right? Folk need to be heard, because you can't declare for me and you have not listened to me. And so I would think a dynamic conversation, it may not be the whole thing. We know that there have to be some policy discussions and some impact, but rather than the typical, let's get a panel of folks and let everybody kind of opine on things, and then folks listen and ask some questions, that's a part of it. But I think in this moment, we've got to come away with some serious commitments to not only talk the talk, but we got to leave there ready to walk the walk.
You know, Maxine Waters, when I was growing up, used to have meetings at the CBC where she basically had an open mic. And it was like, come one, come all. Let me hear what's going on where you are in the streets. And maybe, just maybe, this year we need some of that so we can, as Reverend Al Sharpton would say, keep it real. Dr. Yuri, thank you for being on the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show on Wealthy Wednesdays.
Always good to be with you, my brother, always.
I hope to be with you physically next week in Washington, D.C. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. You're listening to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show on KBLA Talk 1580. More on Jesse Jackson Jr. Show tomorrow when we come forward.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. When me and G get to town on Sunday, we'll be in DC at a B&B, Airbnb. And so, let us know what some of our evenings look like and where